Recently, I got a vacation from my work. 2 beautiful weeks of relaxation and self-care just for me. Of course, the pandemic had forced me to change my initial plan of traveling and actually doing stuff. But free time is always welcomed in my book. I spent most of my days and nights playing video games or binging series and movies. As usual, this also caused my sleep schedule to become an irregular mess. I would go to sleep and wake up at all hours of the day or night, which put me on the receiving end of a lot of judgment from my roommates and best friends, Nicholas and Jess. One night, I woke up a bit after 3 a.m. I had just had around 6 hours of sleep and I was totally parched. Not wanting to wake anyone else up, I tiptoed to the kitchen, keeping all the lights off. I had been living in this house for 4 years now. I can navigate it with my eyes closed. With a glass of water filled to the brim in hand, I started tiptoeing around back to where I came from. As I was walking to my room, a chill ran down my spine. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but this weird sensation filled my body, like my guts were telling me something was wrong. Wary of my surroundings, I stood in the darkness of my living room, trying to understand the source of this feeling. Failing to comprehend what was happening, I dismissed the feeling as nothing more than a product of my half-asleep mind. Being alone in the dark certainly helped my brain fill every corner of my house with shadow monsters and spooky ghosts. My eyes had adjusted to the darkness by now, revealing the truth of the monsters and ghosts as being common objects. Looking around the room with half a smile plastered on my face, as I laughed at myself for being scared of the dark, I noticed a person standing under the streetlight in front of our house. I felt safe inside, so instead of fear, my head was filled with questions about who he could be and what was his purpose here at night. And curiosity made me stare at him, trying to understand the mystery that he now represented in my mind. Anyway, with no light turned on, I was practically invisible from the outside. I think that it was a man, but his morphology wasn't clear from that distance. He was wearing dark jeans, a black hoodie, and black gloves. He was just standing there under the street lamp looking down. I remember thinking to myself, what in the world is that weirdo doing? With a light chuckle. My false sense of security made the situation nothing more than a funny anecdote I could tell Nicholas and Jess in the morning. It all took a turn when he slowly lifted his head, like a robot being activated for the first time. His face was in sight, but I couldn't see any of his features from where I stood. I took a step toward the window and then stopped. His head started moving from left to right, up and down, taking his time like he was scanning our house, looking for something. When he stopped, my curiosity was immediately replaced by fear. He was staring at the living room window, at me. There's no way you can see me. You can't see me. You can't see me. I whispered in the dark, trying to convince myself. Yet somehow I knew that he could see me. What now? Oh, what will his reaction be? I have no idea how long we watched each other without any movement. The anticipation started rising, and my heartbeat with it. It felt like an out-of-body experience watching myself, staring at him and he at me. And then in a flash, he sprinted towards our front door. Letting go of the glass I was holding, I started to run towards the front door to make sure that it was indeed locked. I didn't even hear it crashing into a million pieces on the floor, as my survival instinct was screaming at me to get to that door. At that moment, I got a view of him under my porch light, I couldn't make out his features because there weren't any for me to see. He wore an entirely white mask, hiding his identity. I stared at him while he took a step back, and another, still looking at me, before he sprinted again towards the side of the house. "The back door," I murmured before running towards the only other access that he could use. Again, the door was locked. In my head, I thanked Jess's OCD behavior about safety. Again, he appeared and tried to open the door once again. When he couldn't, he took a step back like earlier. But this time, he raised his left hand, showing 3 fingers before lowering one. He then walked away in a nonchalant demeanor. I followed him with the windows until he was out of sight. I just collapsed on myself and started bawling like a baby, proceeding to wake Nicholas and Jess in the process. Between my tears and wheezing, I explained what had happened. Jess hugged me, while Nicholas chastised me for not screaming to wake them both up. I was too shocked to answer him, but if the sound of glass shattering and me sprinting around the house didn't wake them, then I doubt screaming would have. We proceeded to call the police and tell my story for the second time that night. But the cops never found anything, and only said that they would patrol the area more often. I wish I could say that that was it, that I lived to tell the tale and write a pretty "the end" to my story. But in retrospect, that was merely the prelude of my torment. The next day, I was still stressed but fairly over it. As scary as it was at the time, it was only a failed home invasion attempt. The only thing that bothered me was him lowering his finger. What was that all about? I mumbled out loud before being interrupted by Nicholas. "Crazy people do crazy stuff, Nat. Don't torture yourself trying to understand and just get over it." Empathy wasn't one of Nicholas's strong points, and at that moment, I really wanted his face to meet a chair. But still, I tried to follow his advice and I focused my mind on other things. But it didn't stop me from waking up around 3 a.m. again. As soon as I had opened my eyes, I felt it. That gut feeling again telling me that I wasn't safe. My first thought was that I was having some sort of PTSD from the night before. So I did some breathing exercises and I tried to calm down. My chest felt heavy like a weight was sitting on it as I tried to breathe in. I timed my breath, counting every second of inhalation and expiration, just to focus my mind on something. After a couple of minutes, I realized that no amount of breathing exercises would make the feeling go away. All I knew was that I was in danger somehow. I sat alone in the dark, alert, trying to convince myself again that I was only experiencing residual feelings from the night before. And that's when my eyes wandered to my closed blinds. I wondered if the man was there again. What if he's waiting for me? What if I open my blinds and all I see is his face pressed up against the glass? Those thoughts played in my mind for a minute, before I decided that the only way I could go back to sleep was to make sure that I was safe, and that meant looking outside and hopefully seeing nothing. I rose a shaking hand toward the edge of my window. Just a little push would let me see outside, and at the same time, expose me to it. That awareness put a stop at my already low momentum. I didn't want to take any risk. So, with my back to the wall, I raised my phone behind the blinds and recorded a video of what was going on outside. Just a couple of seconds of recording right before hopping back in the safety of my bed. Like some invisible monster would snatch my feet if I stood too long. I stared at my phone, my thumb hovering over the play button. I think my instinct was trying to tell me not to watch that video and just go back to trying to sleep. But my fear decided otherwise. I took a deep breath and I reviewed the footage. To my horror, the man was there, already scanning every window in the house looking for whatever he wanted, which I assumed was me. I curled into a ball feeling terror overwhelm me. I took my phone and I dialed 911, but the line wouldn't connect. Every other application I tried weren't working either. Tears filled my eyes. I needed someone to help me. I couldn't face this alone. Desperate, I started to crawl out towards Nicholas's bedroom. I didn't want to scream to wake him in case the crazy guy would hear me. And standing up was also not an option. I needed to be impossible to see from outside. Like my leg had been suddenly disabled, I moved forward, one pull at a time toward the next room, while still being mindful of where my gaze would land upon, hoping not to see the man staring at me with his featureless mask. Exhausted and panicked, I reached my roommate's room. "Nicholas, wake up. The crazy guy is here. He's back again," I whispered loudly as I started getting up. The only answer I got was my heart pumping away in my ears, as I noticed his bed was empty. I had seen him go to bed after he had wished me a good night. He was supposed to be here. There wasn't anywhere else that he could be. My mind immediately went to Jess. I had to make sure that she was safe. Throwing away discretion, I ran down the stairs to the basement. I couldn't help but let out a small sigh of relief when I found her in her bed, snoring away. Jess, the guy's back. I can't find Nick anywhere. I think something might have happened to him." In my panic state, I shook her violently by the shoulders, but neither my words nor my action ended her deep sleep. Without any warning, she stopped breathing, and her body started to dissolve into a fine dust. And then there was tapping. Tap, tap, tap. I froze in place. Tap, tap, tap. I knew that it was him trying to get my attention. Tap, tap, tap. But I refused to look at him. I kept my eyes closed. There was a last set of tapping and then nothing. Was he gone? I dared to look outside. He had left, but a message was there in his place. In the foggy basement window of Jess's room was a crossed out 2, followed by a 1. That's when it hit me. The 3 fingers the man held up the night before. It was me, Jess, and Nick. And now I was the only one left. That was a couple of hours ago. Others have joined him outside. There are about 50 people, all wearing the same blank mask in front of my house. I feel like they can see me through the walls or something, because wherever I go in the house, I can feel their eyes on me. I barricaded myself in my room with a little bit of food and water, but I don't think that it matters anymore. I searched the internet for any information that could possibly help me. I did find some other people that had been claimed to have been stalked by people with the same blank mask. They would always post once or twice about it, before never writing anything again. One guy even posted a video of these people surrounding him, chanting some kind of sentence over and over again. People in the comments said it sounded something cryptic. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I'll put it on the screen. but I have no idea what it could mean. The crowd had been saying something in unison for the last hour or so. I can't hear it well, but it sounds similar to the video that I watched. I just hope my story can help someone in the future. The house just started shaking. I think whatever they are calling upon is coming. There is no hope for me. Dad, Mom, Jessica, Nicholas, I'm sorry, and I love you.